Another day in a new apartment. And Nugget's here too. Nugget, ready? Get it. The lighting is beautiful today. My skin flaws are on display, and that kind of feels like how I feel internally, feeling very delicate lately, but I'm very happy to be here, and I really love videos, so I'm happy to be back. I just wanted to have a random chatty video today. As you can see, I'm not entirely settled yet, just randomly have my winter boots over there. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about like what I've been reading lately, what I'm thinking about for the rest of the year, how my goals are going. We're halfway through the year already. Personally, I'm very excited for the second half of my year. The first half has been very chaotic with a lot of changes and transitions. It's not exactly been soul care because it's been so busy, and definitely this past weekend I was feeling the desperate need for soul care, which I've not been having lately. And this week I've just been prioritizing spirituality and really getting my cup filled. What have I been reading lately? I'm getting back into my quiet time, like I said, which, by the way, I just wanted to say I added a little pin in here. I added Snoopy. And yes, I have been reading Proverbs primarily. I'm almost done. I read chapter 27 today, and one of the many things that stuck out to me about Proverbs is that it talks about riches often, and like what riches are and what they're not, and they're not what we think of as riches in heaven with money, but rather spiritual riches. And that's just been a really good reminder because I've been in a very unique financial situation this year, being very unconventional. So I appreciate that it's really like driven home that I can have riches without it looking like I have riches, and my riches have nothing to do with what my life looks like to other people or what it looks like I have financially or don't have. I tend to be more angsty about what I don't have in comparison to other people, which is obviously the thief of joy. But yeah, it's been really stabilizing to remember that what I have has far less to do with what my life looks like to other people, and it's far more to do with the things that are unseen, the things that people don't think about when they think about my life that actually characterizes my life more, which is honestly really freeing as someone who had to unlearn people pleasing and continues to fight like what people think of me all the time, even in good ways. It is so nice to know that my value has nothing to do with other people and what they could possibly take out of my life by viewing it. The irony is you're literally viewing it right now. Proverbs is also reminding me how there can be times where I've fallen into gossip a lot in my life, especially when in female culture that can be very much a bonding tool that a lot of people use, and so that can be one of the biggest reasons why I fall into gossip. And the specific line I really liked is verses 24 through 26 in chapter 26. Whoever hates disguises himself with his lips and harbors deceit in his heart. When he speaks graciously, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Though his hatred be covered with deception, his wickedness will be exposed in the assembly. And that both convicted where I can be weak in negative speech, but also how refraining from negativity is not just about refraining from negativity, but it's also about how credible your positivity is to others. I think unfortunately the power of the words is such that even if what you're saying is truthful in goodness, it's the goodness that you say is going to be discredited if you're frequently known for being negative and saying bad things. And so it feels like that's like a tidal wave that overrides the goodness, even if the goodness is true. Refraining from negativity and constantly imbuing people with the innate value they have, no matter who they are, what they've done to you, is a really good way to remind others of everyone's inherent worth. So that's what I've been enjoying in scripture lately. And then I just got back into Consider the Lilies, which you're probably like, you're still reading that. Yeah, I haven't consistently been reading it, obviously, otherwise I feel like I would be done by now. Because thankfully anxiety has not been a huge issue for me lately. But I did just start getting back into it, and I read chapter 9, which is about above all, and how God's sovereignty is a huge salve for a lot of our worries and concerns. And something I really liked from this that I read was how even though Satan and demons have some power, it's not equivalent to God's, which I think can be something that's easy to forget, because when we think of good versus evil in literature as a whole, entertainment as a whole, we think of it as equal. But spiritually in Christianity, it's actually not. Evil is actually submitted to goodness, and that causes a huge theological question for a lot of people of, well, if evil submits to God, then why wouldn't God just eradicate it? And for me, a lot of those questions personally tend to go back to free will. And something that I think I've said a lot of times, but that I will continue to say, is I just cannot ever equate God with being coercive. So that was a really good reminder that even in hardship, there's still sovereignty, because God is never surprised by evil. God allows evil. God is not the one doing the evil, but he allows it sometimes, like gives it permission, if that makes sense. So the imbalance of power was just a really good reminder that I needed. And then, yeah, I actually just started rereading Emma M. Lyon. I just listened to this a couple months ago, but I retained almost nothing. So I'm rereading it and already getting a lot more out of it. I just started it. So she moved into St. Crispian's, and she's in, I think it would be considered the attic, and reading Paradise Lost and making her little home in this area that was not her original housing location in the house, but she's been booted to the attic. So yeah, I like her voice. It's a lot of fun, and I'm really glad I decided to reread it, because I basically just did not have an experience previously. And then my friend also gave me volume 2, so of course that will be one of my other priorities this month. As a whole, I am definitely getting back into reading, especially with packing and moving. That took up most of my June, so I just feel really out of it in a lot of ways, and I feel like the second half of the year I'm finally getting my life back. I think this is the least amount I've ever read in 6 months. I've only, as of today, I just finished a book, but I've only read 19 books this year, which for some people would be a lot. For me, that's really, really low. Yeah, I've had a lot of hurdles of just transitions, and I think transitions as a whole just take a lot of energy out of me. Reading is one of the first things to go when my energy is zapped, because my brain is fried and reading needs your brain. So as much as I love it, if I'm pooped, it's not gonna happen. And May was a brain fog of grief. I finally am like, wow, I have free time again, and I can actually decide what I want to do with my time, and I don't just have to be preparing for something, anticipating something. I was doing a lot of trauma healing, so processing through something, I finally have the choice of what I can do. So I have gotten a bit behind my original TBR schedule for the year. I did recently finish What My Bones Know by Stephanie Pugh, which was wonderful. So I finished that in June, even though that was my May book, so I haven't even touched my June book or my July book. So other than Emma M. Lyon, I think those 2 books will be my priorities this month. So the first one is going to be A Tale of Two Cities reread. I was originally going to do that in June, but I'm bumping it now. My dad taught A Tale of Two Cities for a really long time, which is when I read it the first time. So he actually has a study version with a ton of footnotes, so I'm probably gonna get a copy of his study version and like pair my copy with his study version as I read it. I'm really excited to just get a lot more out of it, and it is my all-time favorite book I've not read in the longest amount of time, so I'm looking forward to that. That's definitely like my bigger, more intellectual feat of the month compared to anything else I'm reading. So I'm kind of using M.M. Lion as a little jumping off point. Not entirely the same, but to at least get my language closer to Dickens's language than just a modern like fantasy or something, right? So this is at least a partial step back towards that language. Not by much, but you know, the attempt is there. And then the July book that I want to get to is Uglies, which I never grew up reading it, but I'm super curious just for the sake of nostalgia and early 2000s and everything. It might be horrendous. It might be really cringy, but I'm really curious to see, and I think that will be a really nice balance from Charles Dickens, like complete opposite. So I think pairing those makes a lot of sense. And then the final book that I want to read, or at least start this month rather, I might be mispronouncing this, but it's called Kintu, and it is a book that I'm counting towards my around the world goal. It is for Uganda, and I'm really excited to read it, and that kind of brings me into my transition towards my goals for the year and how those have been going. So my around the world goal is probably the one I've done the poorest at, so that's a little bit more what I'm going to be emphasizing the second half of the year. So Stephanie Fu actually was born in Malaysia, so I got to count while my bones know towards Malaysia. It was a really fantastic trauma memoir, and I really liked that it went into the science behind some patterns of unhealed trauma and how they can get passed down generations. I also thought it was really important she brought in the immigrant experience, because obviously the literal historical events that people went through because of their ethnicity shapes their trauma, but then also I feel like the process of immigration is traumatizing in its own way. And so putting that all together to better understand her story was really inspiring to witness, and definitely give a voice to a lot of people in that they're not alone because of their specific experiences and how that can lend to trauma, and specifically trauma from parents especially. So I really appreciated that it gave spotlight to that. I just finished Annie John by Jamaica Kincaid, which was for Antigua and Barbuda. I feel like, honestly, aside from my lack of reading lately, it kind of put me into a little bit of a reading slump. So this story was about Annie John, who is, I believe, very heavily influenced on Jamaica's life. So a very similar parallel to her life, where she has a very strained relationship with her mom that gets worse over time as she goes through adolescence. And I researched Jamaica Kincaid's life a bit before reading, and it seems to pair up very closely with her life experiences. So as a whole, I would say the book read very morosely for me, and I think that just inherently wedged a divide between me and her, and me really feeling attached to the story. And I have to wonder if that's just because of our different experiences of healing or lack of healing, because it felt like a lot of her reflections were a lot more sour and bitter. And not that I can't relate to that at all, but I like to end with hope and optimism. So we're just different in our experiences that way, but I appreciate that she brought in her culture as well, and her upbringing of school, and just a melting pot of cultures a little bit at her school, because of imperialism and such. So I liked the little bit of slice of life that she put in it that I can't relate to, but I also just found myself, pretty distant from attachment to the story and the characters as a whole, which could also be because I partially audiobooked it. Would that be surprising? No. But I think it also had a lot to do with grief, and so I think it was really poor timing for me with my own grief, and was just like, yeah, this is not a book that's really gonna keep me invested in reading right now, and so I definitely slumped. Yeah, so I have about 10 other books on my TBR currently that are from other countries. I currently am at 32 countries out of, I personally put 199. I don't think that's the exact number, but I added, like, Scotland is technically not its own country, but I added that separately. So I have like a couple of distinctions on there that maybe make the number not entirely accurate. But yeah, I will probably start with some of the books that are currently on my TBR that I have, like Uganda. And then from there, I'll probably do my own research towards other countries that I don't have and what makes the most sense or is the most interesting to me topically to read from those countries. So I am looking forward to reading a lot more from other countries this year. My friend Michael just told me to read a book from Honduras. I look forward to making progress on that goal the rest of this year. Probably not every single book I'm going to be reading, but I'll definitely be making pretty consistent progress. So yeah, looking forward to that. I would say, with the exception of the audiobook fail with Emma M. Lyon, sorry girl, I would say my retainment has been a lot better. I obviously have read less than normal this year, but also I think what I have read, I've taken more of my time with the exception of Annie John just being a reading slump. And you know, if you ask me about My Imperfectly Perfect Body from January, I can tell you about that and get a decently good conversation going about body image and body dysmorphia and everything. I think that was done really well. I have read a lot of library books, so I have not done a ton of annotating this year, but hopefully, starting with Tale of Two Cities, I can start doing a little more annotation in some of the books I'm reading as well, second half of the year. So those are two of my goals. And then I had two other goals. One of them was to work with my brain when it comes to reading, especially with seasonal depression time, to pick up things that feel like they will support my well-being best for that season or that time. And I would say in general I'm pretty good at that, but I've definitely made some mistakes in winter before. So to be continued in the winter, if I do a better job this coming winter, to pick books that support my mental health. But I would say so far this year, I've picked books I've enjoyed, with the exception of, like, when I picked up Annie John, I didn't know I was going to suddenly lose my grandpa. So you can't always plan for grief, and it can happen anyway. But I really liked Tuesdays with Maury. It was a really nice precursor to acceptance with grief, and even though that felt like the most intimidating read, I'm actually really glad I read it before my grandpa passed, and I really appreciated that. And the trauma book could not have been more timely. That felt like a very God moment to me, where I wanted to pick it up sooner and didn't, but then by the time I did pick it up, it could not have been a better time because of a recent trigger I went through, and it supported me in a month where I was really, really hurting, and I really felt like God was refining a lot. And man, his timing with that book was really important, and I'm very grateful for that. So I will continue to pick up things intuitively, and I think God will continue to show that his timing is perfect through books, and then let alone that can then give me evidence through the larger, bigger questions of my life that can feel more vast, that God is consistent in the little things, so of course he's going to be consistent in the big things. And then my final goal was to raise my average rating, which I don't know if we can technically say I have because I've read less books than normal. However, the books I have read, I have not rated anything under 3 stars, which is fantastic for me, and that alone feels like I've raised the average rating. I want to say I've only had like a handful of 3 stars. I have a feeling, my gut is telling me the majority of the books I've read this year have been 4 stars, which is really good. So I would say I'm succeeding at this, and I think the intuitive reading, depending on the time of year, has probably helped a lot with that. So that's been really nice. And I think it also helps that I know that I have very clear intention of direction with reading and my goals that I have made. So I think in and of itself, like knowing I'm working towards goals that I specifically want for myself has helped the reading experience as a whole be more rewarding. And yeah, so I have very much been enjoying that. And I'm looking forward to reorganize my bookshelves and everything as I get more unpacked. I haven't done my little journaling of a recap of June, and looking forward to I'm gonna read this month, though I basically already know and like told you what I'm gonna be focusing on this month, but I just like doing the journal piece of it. I think I'm gonna leave it there. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're reading some good stuff. And I hope that this summer can bring a lot of needed decompression and relaxation, because I know that I need that. And now I have a nice porch to enjoy some quiet time and enjoy some reading time. So I'm very much looking forward to that, as well as some pool time, of course. I hope you have a wonderful week, a wonderful day, night, afternoon, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye, friends.